The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and/or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me, we'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
And we are going to start right here. Hello and welcome to Triple Feature. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me over there, he's Sean, you're not, and he wore blue velvet as well as Robert Winfrey. How do you do, sir?
If you haven't cinema, you haven't seen enough.
Cinema you, cinema me, cinema everybody.
I fucking warned you all I would do this review high. I'm not zonked out of my gourd, but I have dosed.
I think we're focusing on David Lynch on this triple feature, another director focus. We're doing a lot of those lately. And as I told the story, I think the last podcast, we were going to do Mulholland Drive during Pride Month. And now, after having seen the movie, now I know why it was on that list. But I thought it would be a better fit if we actually looked at David Lynch, and that gave me an opportunity to talk about two movies from my youth, Sean Coma, in my youth. I grew up. I was 12 or 13 when I started getting into heavy metal, and one of the bands I got into was Anthrax. They have a song called "I'm the Man," and you could actually, and they sample Dennis Hopper. I also got into industrial music around that time, so I got into bands like Nine Inch Nails, Pigface, KMFDM, and Ministry, and they also used a lot of samples. They sampled a lot of Blue Velvet. So I remember like talking to my like film and heavy metal buddies at the time. They're like, "Where are they getting all these samples from?" Like 90% of them are from Blue Velvet. So me and my cinema snob friends, cinema. We watched Blue Velvet one night, like when we were teenagers, and it was a little too much movie for me then. I don't think it's too much movie for me now, but it is definitely interesting. I mentioned I was a fan of Nine Inch Nails growing up, and when David Lynch partnered with Trent Reznor to create the soundtrack for Lost Highway, I made a point of watching Lost Highway. When I was able to collect my brains that had oozed out of my head and put them back in, that movie stood out to me from the black and white footage of Patricia Arquette getting a doggy style. And I remember thinking at the time, this has got to be the least sexy doggy style I've ever seen. And in my 14, 15, 16 years of, it's 1997, in my 20 years of life, I have seen a lot of doggy style, and this least sexy I've ever seen.
Are we counting badly shot porn in there, or are we talking just simulated for mainstream cinema?
I mean, any doggy style I've ever seen. I've never quite seen anything as blah as Patricia Arquette, which I'm sure was done purposefully. I'm not saying that is her badly acting or badly directed. And I watched it this morning, and I was like, this isn't as bad as I remember it being. Like, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. And then I'd never seen Mulholland Drive. So I like our little relationship now because I go, Sean, I have a wild hair up my ass. And he goes, great, I have lots of drugs. Let's do this. So
I'm only on the one. Only one.
But I was not as familiar with David Lynch beyond those two stories. I haven't watched a lot of his filmography, and I was not a fan of Twin Peaks. Like, my friends all watched it. But my friends were all into weird shit. I didn't watch the X-Files either. My friends are over here. I'm over. I'm always doing my own thing. I beat my own drummer. What about you? What's your familiarity with the David Lynch?
It really started with Twin Peaks, I think. And I was aware of it. I remember catching a few episodes here and there when I was a kid and not having quite the expanded background then that I do now. I was just kind of very put off by the weirdness.
Mhm.
I sort of didn't get why I heard so many of the grown-ups talking about it all the time and how they were blown away by this episode or that episode. I didn't get it. And then years later, I remember vaguely hearing about Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway as being movies that existed and that people who give pretty naked statues are really fond of. But again, I hadn't really bothered to track them down because by that point I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Wasn't really my bag, although I kind of wish I would have been better friends now. I now wish that I'd been better friends back then with a lot of the kids who were ranting and raving about it to anyone who listened. Might have learned me a thing or two. Eventually I kind of caught on that Lost Highway had one of the all-time absolute bangers of soundtrack albums.
I'm going to go ahead and make a bold statement, Cotton. The Lost Highway soundtrack is 10 times better than the movie.
And it's not even close. That's at least 10 times better. Not that the movie is bad. It's just that the soundtrack feels more intentional and coherent. And I'll get into why nobody should really be making that argument about Lost Highway anyway. But anyway, so I learned about that. And then
if you go to a David Lynch film looking for coherency, that's like, that's like when the inmates ask me if I can, if I can help them with their Social Security. That's not my job, asshole. Like, this is not what you don't go to David Lynch for coherent.
But it's an intentional incoherent.
Oh yeah, he's not incompetent.
It's ordered chaos.
I would say I'm going to let you finish your statement, but I want to go ahead and say that none of this is me complaining about David Lynch. But to put it another way, a less crass way. You have a person who deals with a certain art style. The art style is surrealist or is, postmodern or something. It's not real. You look at their paintings, you're like, this looks like a mess of color. But but it's pretty. People take different things from it. It stands out as art. It is not incompetent, but it is absolutely purposefully incoherent. That's kind of a David Lynch movie for me. He is playing with time. He is playing with cinematography. He is playing with theme. He is almost. I had the word and then I lost it, but he's almost like not flippant, but sort of delightfully chaotic in his presentation. You know what he reminded me of? He reminded me if so we're having a party with all of these directors, okay? If Jordan Peele over here, and he's and he's very black, and he's and he's got his fist in the air, and we have Quentin Tarantino over here, and he's talking about feet and drugs, and samurais, and then Wes Anderson is sort of nerdy and in the corner, and occasionally talking to a pretty girl about the aliens he just got into, and they're all trying to avoid him. And then it's like somebody grabs Wes Anderson and says, "Come into the room with me," and they feed him mushrooms and LSD and PCP and ecstasy, and then they spin him around 3 times and shove him out the door. And Wes Anderson turns into David Lynch.
See, thank you, because while I was watching Blue Velvet in particular, I think maybe it's because Blue Velvet just kind of reminds me of an early beta for Twin Peaks. And it's like in a lot of Wes Anderson movies, I can also see a lot of kind of Twin Peaks sort of influence in there in the mood of various scenes, any given scene really. But I was trying to think of really what it was my brain was trying to connect between those two. But the way I look at it is ordinarily when it comes to the true auteur of cinema.
Cinema.
So often we think of it as the screen is their canvas and they're painting their vision. When it comes to David Lynch movies, I think the way I started seeing it is this isn't his canvas. This is the palette full of paints that he's handing to all the little Bob Rosses to paint all their happy little accidents and to really say nothing of how they interpret it, because in his mind, who's he to say whether they're right or they're wrong? What do I say all the time? The quote from Dave Grohl: you can sing a song out to 10,000 people and have them sing it right back at you for 10,000 individual reasons.
It's the cinema version of the can of soup painting.
Yeah,
I think that was William S. Burroughs, but
it's pop art.
yeah.
I almost said Andy Kaufman. God, I can't believe I'm blanking on who painted the can of soup.
William S. Burroughs.
No, it wasn't.
My point. I'm gonna. Yeah,
it wasn't Ansel Adams. He was photography.
So the point with the can of soup, as far as as David Lynch, who is it? Who did the can of soup?
Tab for a cause is searching. It was Andy Warhol. Yes, it was Andy Warhol.
I get him in. Weirdly enough, I get Andy. What a white guy thing to say. I get Andy Warhol and William S. Burroughs confused. I'm hoity. Anyway, to sort of conclude the sort of introduction of David Lynch. David Lynch, he kind of, what I like about him is he puts his movie out there and he's like, I don't know what you're doing here. Well, what do you think I'm doing? He's like a girl playing hard to get. He's like, well, what do you think I'm doing? I don't know, dude. Bill Pullman turned into Patricia Arquette. I don't understand what happened in this movie. Dennis Hopper's running around trying to fuck things like Denzel Washington in Training Day. What are you telling us? And he's like, what do you think I'm telling you? Fuck! Answer my questions! Like, David Lynch turns every single one of us into Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men. You know, it's just I want the truth.
You say Tom Cruise. I think he turns everyone into an aggravated Patton Oswalt.
Just everyone screaming at David Lynch, tell me the truth. And David Lynch going, you can't handle the truth. The truth is, I don't know what I'm doing. I was on set one day and I told Naomi Watts, I want you to bang the hot chick. Okay, well then what do you want me to do? I don't know. Walk into the pool. David, is there a script here or are you just high? Do you think I'm high? Fuck you, David Lynch. Just fuck off. Was the entire production. Everyone yelling fuck off at David Lynch. And he's like, no. They gave me money. I'm going to make my silly art film.
You know what? Okay, now hang on a second. Because this has to be said. When it comes to unorthodox, off-kilter, and sometimes flat-out weird directors, I think there's a stylistic line that you have to draw where you have guys like David Lynch who know how to kind of Jimmy Page their way through and make the chaos seem perfectly orderly. And then on the other side, you have someone like Tim Burton. Tim Burton, everything on the screen is weird and big and colorful and screaming at you, and it's tonally all the same. With David Lynch, on the other hand, you have the word fugue gets thrown around a lot. Because what you have is just a world around the characters that's just a little bit off. It doesn't veer always into full-on acid trip surrealism, but it's got kind of a very kind of a lot of times a dreamy kind of softness over in places, especially in Blue Velvet. And then you've got the characters who are reacting to it not in manic over-the-top shock, but in something ranging from bemusement to just slight confusion.
There's somebody that we looked at. I don't remember who exactly. It might have been John Waters. Actually, yeah, I was thinking about John Waters as I was watching these, and how everyone talks like they're in a movie, in a John Waters movie.
Yeah.
Nobody, there's not a realistic bit of dialogue. Everyone knows they're in a movie and they're talking movie.
Yeah.
That's very much David Lynch. David Lynch movies know they're a movie, which I think is an interesting 4-dimensional shape that these movies create, because these are not meant to represent a relatable, realistic story. Not in that sense. These are pure, unadulterated fictions. You know, it is fantasy without the fantasy element, if you know what I mean. Like, when we think of fantasy, we think of like Dungeons and Dragons. We think of Star Wars, you know, space fantasy, Renaissance fantasy, whatever. But fantasy can be anything that we want it to be. And so, again, if you want to have, Naomi Watts, you know, and I can't remember the lady's name, playing with time, and you don't know who the real Naomi Watts is. Is she Betty? Is she this other character? Mm-hmm. You know, if you Lost Highway, you have, you know, what look like, you know, Pinhead without the pins, you know, showing up, you know, and he's in 2 different places at the same time, and Bill Pullman turns into Balthazar, what's his fuck, and then they turn back again, you know, like, you can do the thing about a David Lynch movie, and then we'll get into who he actually is, and then these movies themselves, is that for the people who go, I watch movies to be entertained, I don't watch movies to be reminded of real life, these are probably too much movie for you regardless. But these are those kinds of movies. I want to see cinematic art. I want to be taken from my humdrum life and transported to a world of different. Okay, that is a David Lynch movie. Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and Lost Highway are not any universe I've ever lived in, ever. Nobody has. Nobody has. They are he painted pictures, and then you stepped into the painting. You are not in a real world in any way, shape, or form. But I think that works to his favor, because then there's no expectation of, wait, when stuff stops making sense, it's okay. It made sense to David Lynch. And I talk about this a lot. When people ask me, like, what's your podcast about? And I tell them, well, we're movie and TV reviews. That's usually enough for most people. But some people ask me follow-up questions. And they go, well, what do you do that's different? And I said, well, we're kind of the English lit for movies. You know, we're the book club. We're all my podcasts.
Book club, yes.
Yeah, we are the book club for movies. Yes. And a lot of times what you hear in a book club is, what's your interpretation of this? That's why I was saying that before with him. There's very much, you know, very agreed upon things you can take from a lot of movies. I think David Lynch is one of those that stand apart, because I don't think anyone agrees what his movies are about, you know, or what they say. I think there's some consensus. A lot of people are arriving in the same place, but I think there's just as many people arguing about it. You know what? And to the very thing of, like, well, I don't understand the end of this movie, like Mulholland Drive. I don't understand what happened here. Well, these actions took place, but what does that mean? What are we trying to say with this? And that is left to wide interpretation. That is the beauty of a David Lynch movie.
Well, number one, I think that when it comes to having the endings laid out for them, it kind of works, because in a sense, congratulations, you're as confused as the characters. 90% of the time, they have no fucking clue what's happened. So they're actually perfect analogs for you, appreciated viewer. But also,
I see myself in Mulholland Drive. Oh, you relate to Naomi Watts' character? No, I don't. I don't have any idea what's going on either. Sorry, go ahead.
But the other thing that I think gets people about these movies is what so often happens is we go into the movie wanting to identify with the main character somehow. Mm-hmm. We want to put ourselves in the main character's shoes. And the simple fact of the matter is his movies kind of force you to come to the realization you are not the main character. In all actuality,
right,
you are one of the guys behind the counter at the hardware store. You are the dude walking his dog while Kyle MacLachlan is walking past you. Like, that is what you are. The weird epic shit is not happening to you. It has nothing to do with you. You are just the person out there doing things, just living their life, and that is okay.
Yeah, it's almost like a humbling thing. You know, we are the stars of our
really
own
is.
movie. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe you're not. Maybe you're just an extra. Maybe you're,
Like,
as Hitchcock said, you're
no,
living
honey,
scenery.
You are not Brad Pitt. On a good day, you're Steve Buscemi.
So, David Lynch. David Lynch, born 1946, is an American filmmaker, visual artist, musician, and actor, and otherwise befuddling individual. Lynch has received critical acclaim for his films, which are often distinguished by their surrealist qualities. He's received numerous accolades, including the Golden Lion in 2006 and an honorary Academy Award in 2019. In 2007, a panel of critics convened by The Guardian announced that after all the discussion, no one could fault the conclusion that David Lynch is the most important filmmaker of the current era. Lynch studied painting, well, that explains a lot, before he began making short films in the late 1960s. His first feature-length film was Eraserhead in 1977, which saw a success as a midnight movie. He received nominations for the Academy Award for Best Director for The Elephant Man in 1980, Blue Velvet in 1986, and Mulholland Drive in 2001. His film Wild at Heart in 1990 earned the Cannes Film Festival Palme d'Or. His other notable films include Dune, which we reviewed when the new remake came out, Lost Highway, and Inland Empire. Lynch and Mark Frost created the ABC series Twin Peaks, which lasted a year, and he co-wrote and directed the film's prequel, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and the limited series Twin Peaks The Return in 2017. He also portrayed Gordon Cole in the Twin Peaks projects. So other notable films that he has done besides the one we're going to talk about, or the ones we've already reviewed, The Straight Story, which came out in 1999. He also worked on the Air and Hotel Room. He has, like I said, won just crap tons of awards. There's a whole wiki dedicated to this. I'm not reading through it. So that's David Lynch. All right, so let's get into Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is a 2001 surrealist neo-noir mystery film written and directed by David Lynch, starring Naomi Watts, Laura Harring, that's her name, Justin Theroux, Ann Miller, Mark Pellegrino, and Robert Foster. It tells the story of an aspiring actress named Betty Elms, newly arrived in Los Angeles, who meets and befriends an amnesiac woman, Harring, recovering from a car accident. The story follows several other vignettes and characters, including a Hollywood film director, Theroux. Okay, so two things. One, when we, as Triple Feature moved on, I decided to abandon the plot synopsis. We do it on Damn You Hollywood still.
Okay, sure.
I reading through it on the Wikipedia page. I mean, like we talk a little bit about what happens in the movie, but I stopped doing for a while now just a strict recitation of the plot because it kills the podcast dead. I debated bringing it back for this because like this movie is dense. All these are kind of dense. There's a lot that goes on in here, and it's a lot of twisting and weaving. But the basic idea is that we have Rita who walks away from a car accident. She gets held up first, but they never have time to do anything with her because then they're hit by the car by like speed racing teenagers. She walks away from the car wreck. She ends up at Betty's new apartment, whom she's taking over. It's her aunt's apartment. She ends up taking it over, and her aunt's a famous actress. And then the first leg of this movie is trying to figure out who the hell Rita is and where she came from and why she's stumbling about and has a head injury. The second thing that's happening is we have a director who's trying to make a movie, and he is being strong-armed into casting a particular woman in the lead role. And he doesn't want to because he's the director, and he doesn't realize he's working for the mob. And so they're like, get with the program, pal. And then just when you think this movie is making any kind of sense, wriggly bam! It changes. And now Betty is somebody else. And Rita is herself before the car accident. And she's somehow involved with the director. And there's some such thing where the Betty character in her new form is trying to kill the Rita character in her previous form. And then at the end, there's a whole thing with an apartment and a key, and the Betty character, Naomi Watts, is besieged by demon old people, and then like Laurie from The Deuce just blows her brains out. Mulholland Drive. Remember when I said these people give dialogue like they know they're in a movie? It wasn't quite, man, you never get me, copper. But I mean, it was very, the dialogue delivery, the performance is almost very soapy. It's like I said, it's almost self-aware. Not bad or anything, but for me, it just definitely felt like these are not how real people talk. This is performance talk. Through a lot of the movie.
I think the amazing thing to me is that a lot of the dialogue in these particular kinds of David Lynch movies, we'll set aside something like Dune, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
But especially in something like this, if we were to watch it in literally just about any other movie, by literally just about any other director, we would throw around things like stilted, forced, hackneyed. What high school did you cast these actors from, and will their production of Oklahoma miss them? Shit like that.
Very Wes Anderson.
But you put it in the tempo and the mood and the motif and the sort of world building logic, if you will, of a David Lynch movie, and all of a sudden it's like a hand in a glove.
The only one it works for is the cowboy. When the cowboy is like, you're being a smart aleck. Stop being a smart aleck and get with the program. Do as we say, and you'll be rewarded. Don't do as we say, and you're going to see me twice. Like that, and I kind of like missed a word or two, but that's basically what he says to Justin Theroux, and it's fucking awesome. Like the delivery on the cowboy, especially when he gets into you being a smart aleck, I was like, wow, there is like menacing dialogue, and then there's that.
That's some Javier Bardem shit.
Yeah, like that cool as a cucumber, sort of psychotic. Like, if I wanted to, I could erase your existence and and your whole family's existence for centuries to come. But I'm gonna give you the chance to be smart here. Don't be a dumbass. David
Lynch just directed the greatest Jake the Snake Roberts promo of all time.
Yeah, no shit. The wrestlers today could learn a thing or two. But I my thoughts on this movie in general, because we don't need to spend too long on it. I think I like a nice noir, and I think I think like that first half of the movie where it's just dealing with Rita's amnesia, I think worked really, really well. My problem is it's so compartmentalized from what's going on with Justin Theroux that I think I have the right guy. He's the director, Adam Kesher. It's so compartmentalized, at least for a good length of the film. From what he's doing, it almost feels like two separate stories. When they finally intermingle them, I'm like, okay, I kind of get this. But then just as soon as they start intermingling those two stories, we're into this back half where everyone switches characters. And they're doing something completely different now. There is a lot left for interpretation in terms of, like, I was reading about how helps if I have characters' names. It helps if, like, Diane. I was reading about how Betty is Diane's projection. Betty is who Diane wishes she was. She wishes she was a better person, a more innocent person, and I thought that was an interesting interpretation. I don't know how much I agree with it. It almost feels like, I hate to throw this out there because it immediately makes everything we're saying sound stupid, but stay with me. It almost feels like parallel dimensions, and like you're, in the same movie, you're sort of examining the Mirror universe.
You actually may be onto something there, because we talked before about how he very intentionally leaves so much
Mhm.
open-ended. This is an essay test. This is not multiple choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with David's movies, it's not so much do you have the right or wrong or a complete or incomplete interpretation, but which interpretation is most interesting to you. It's almost a Rorschach in that sense. And one of the most interesting ones that I read from Mulholland was actually the opposite of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that everything Betty was seeing around her was some kind of ideation or fantasy of things that might be or could be
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of her life as the big things that she thinks she's destined for play out, and that all quickly just kind of spirals beyond what she had initially dreamed awaited her.
I want to read this to you. Justin Theroux said of Lynch's feelings on the multiple meanings people perceive in the film, I think he's genuinely happy for it to mean anything you want. He loves it when people come up with really bizarre interpretations. David works from his subconscious. And you said something I thought was pretty brilliant. And I waited till now to go back to it. But Mulholland, if there was other than my personal taste in these movies, my personal stories with them, if you're looking for a through thread, you brought up dreams. Like if you've ever had a very lucid, very vivid dream, and where you wake up and you're like, that felt so real. Like I've had, especially like after I think it was either Jonas or Lily, I can't remember which one, but I remember like having very vivid dreams of like, dying shortly after their birth, and waking up like having to, shit, are they still here? Or I've had dreams about, this is years ago, but I absolutely had really intensely negative dreams about Melissa. And I woke up and it took me a minute to remember I was still married in bed with my wife.
Yeah.
Because in my dream I wasn't. And I was like, I kind of had to look around. I've definitely woken up from certain dreams and I'm like, I don't know where I am right now. And I have to like take a minute and go, okay, I got my surroundings again, because that dreams were that intense. That to me feels like, I think on the one hand, he's telling a story about the sleazy underbelly of Hollywood productions.
Too, yes.
He is making Mulholland Drive is an editorial statement about the uses and abuses of people in Hollywood. On the other hand, he's doing it from like a lucid dream state of, I have thoughts, but also this is all dreamy and surrealist, and I don't want to commit to anything.
And the past few years, we've had so many memoirs and documentaries and even as simple as sit-down interviews with people who were really kind of at the height of their power, the height of their influence in the 90s. And we have learned some really, truly terrible things about the entertainment industry, pop culture, and even ourselves for kind of what we allowed ourselves to be led to believe. I feel like adding that kind of theoretical layer of editorialization to kind of all of this kind of lucid nightmare dreamscape vibe that everything kind of has. I feel like that just kind of makes me appreciate Lynch just that little bit more.
It's interesting because he's definitely got some concerted opinions, because we talked about this with Wes Anderson too. Like he has some very concerted opinions about rich white people. He is absolutely criticizing them.
Yes.
But from a loving place of like, they're not all bad, but here's some problems. And I think that's kind of David Lynch's thing. But like I said, David Lynch is what happened. David Lynch is Christopher Lloyd from Taxi, but like after the drugs. He's Iggy. Okay. So like Wes Anderson was Iggy before the drugs, and David Lynch is Iggy after the drugs.
Ooh, I haven't thought about. You know what? I haven't thought about that episode where they kind of displayed the downfall of Jim Ignatowski.
Yeah.
quite like that in years.
I love that episode. Like his hair is combed,
Yeah.
his dog's wearing sweater. They're like,
I remember that. Yeah.
Would you like to try a pot brownie? And then he's all Christopher Lloyd, and like minutes later, like, oh, boss, the cab, it ate me. You know, I don't know.
He kind of shot right past Clue and Doc Brown.
Yes. You know, Professor Plum, I think it was. Anyway, anything else about Mulholland Falls? Jeez, I keep doing that. Mulholland Drive.
No, I mean, I think we said it all. I do think, I will say this. I'm not going to have too much to say about individual performances necessarily, but Naomi Watts brings out the best of that intentionally stilted dialogue in such a way.
It's so soapy, right? It's like stagey and soapy.
Brilliant.
It's breathy. I love her in it. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's great. It was just one of those, like, no one talks that way. Stop.
Right. But again, from the moment you see her at the airport, like something out of a spit and polished apple pie on baseball game day wholesome 50s or 60s family movie.
Dorothy Gale, the woman who plays Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz.
Not Natalie Wood. How are we blanking on those obvious names now?
And it's funny because I see the biopic in my head too. Anyway, she sounds like, well,
God, my gay card should be revoked for this.
She's speaking like she's Dorothy in the black and white scenes from The Wizard of Oz. It's just gonna kill me when you finally like yell it out, by the way.
Let's see here. Dorothy character. I should have just used actress. Judy Garland. That's it.
Judy.
God damn it.
Judy. Yes. Yeah, she gives a very Judy Garland-esque performance in this. It's really good. And you know, just because I'm me, I have to say, Laura Harring. I don't know what else I've seen her in, if I've seen her in anything else, but she is absolutely stunning in this. Like, if I have to watch someone look around, if I have to watch a woman walking around looking bewildered, you know, she makes a pretty bewildered woman.
If she was in anything else, by all means, shout it out. But otherwise, I have to assume this was like her Operation Ivy self-titled album.
Yeah, I can tell.
Just like one and done, but goddamn, was it a good one?
Okay, so up to this point, she was in Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out, The Forbidden Dance, Exit to Eden, Black Scorpion 2, Aftershock, Little Nicky. After this, she's in John Q, Derailed, Rabbits, Willard. She's in The Punisher from 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that was her. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, look, she's in...
I think I know who you mean now.
She's in Ghost Son. She's in a lot. The last couple of things she's done... She was in Father of the Bride from last year. She's in The Thinning, New World Order, Inside The Thinning, Sex Ed, Return to Babylon, and then she's done a bunch of television. She was in Alien Nation, things I've actually heard of. She's in Alien Nation, Baywatch. She's in the 1995-96 Flipper. She was in Baywatch Nights. She was an episode of Frasier. She's done some Law and Order. She's Rebecca Doyle in The Shield. And then the last couple of things she did were Law and Order, Criminal Intent, NCIS, Los Angeles, and Chasing Life.
I can now actually kind of place where I've seen her in those.
Yeah. She has one of those.
I would have never thought about it if you hadn't looked it up, but
she has like one of those weirdly familiar faces where like she there's like 10 other actresses I could have thought she looked like just like. She has a very Hollywood face. Very pretty face, but she's definitely like, if you're looking at a bunch of headshots, it's always her that gets picked. Like, just like based on nothing else. Like she's just like, you should be in pictures, and then she shows up and performs. She's like, you should be on television.
She is the embodiment of I just have that kind of a face.
Yeah, very much so. All right, let's get into She Wore Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is a 1986 American neo-noir mystery thriller film written and directed by David Lynch, blending psychological horror with film noir. Film stars Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini. Speaking of bewildered women, I'm seeing a pattern. Dennis Hopper in his greatest performance ever, and Laura Dern. And Laura Dern as the white woman. And is named after the 1951 song of the same name. The film concerns a young college student who, returning home to visit his ill father, discovers a severed human ear in a field like you do. The ear then leads him to uncover a vast criminal conspiracy and enter into a romantic relationship with a troubled lounge singer. So this fucking movie. So yeah, Kyle MacLachlan gets mixed up with Isabella Rossellini, who is under the thumb of Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is in league with the cops, and Kyle MacLachlan doesn't know who he can trust. And Isabella Rossellini doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but she's hot, and so of course he sleeps with her, because there's the lesson in all of this. No matter how crazy you are, if you're hot, some guy will bang you. Because if you're a pretty girl and you pay attention to a guy, it doesn't matter how crazy you are. At least not in the beginning. Gets a little worn out by the end. But he so he wants to save her from Dennis Hopper, and Dennis Hopper is not having any of it. It ends with Kyle MacLachlan like confronting Dennis Hopper, and Dennis Hopper going to kill him, and Dennis Hopper takes a bullet to the dome instead, and Kyle MacLachlan, runs off into the sunset with Laura Dern, and Isabella Rossellini is reunited with her son, who Dennis Hopper was holding hostage. That's really a short shrift plot synopsis, and it's a little more it's the most coherent of the three, but it's pretty straightforward in that sense. What's not, here's the thing, it's like, as a dry recitation of what happens in this movie, yeah, it's very straightforward. People don't change places in time, there's none of that. However, this is where I got the John Waters vibes, this movie specifically. That scene where he goes to, you ever been to the pussy place? Take him to the pussy. He's never been to the pussy place. Take him to the pussy place. And they go to the guy's house where like unkept women are hanging about. And there's a whole thing of just like, I want beer. What kind of beer you like? Heineken. Fuck that. Pabst Blue Ribbon. And immediately every white man across the United States was like, yes, this is my movie. And then there's a good discussion over, I'm not drinking it from a can. Get glass. Get the glass? Yes, get the glass. You can cut the runtime of this movie.
Yes, Devon, get the glass.
You could cut the runtime down in Blue Velvet by a third if you cut out the repeating of lines. Everyone says something, someone repeats it back to them, and they go, yes, and then they move on to the next thing. It was like, this is like a weird Refn-esque way of talking. Boy, it's not another director focus we should do at some point, but
yeah.
The most memorable thing about Blue Velvet is Dennis Hopper, because Isabella Rossellini does a really good job of like traumatized, scared to death woman, who makes and who hasn't been there. Make love to me. I'm in danger in the same sentence. It's like, what? Like, how is there time for this sort of thing? We'll do it or my feelings will be hurt, but do it quickly because we're in danger. Everything about you is weird. I don't want to be here anymore. Which is Kyle MacLachlan's whole fucking character, by the way. Like, none of this seems like dream states. None of this seems right, and I don't want to be here, but I don't want to walk away and leave somebody in danger because that's immoral. I'm not entirely sure what to do. And there's poor Laura Dern going, why can't I be a nice man who makes me a nice home and I have nice children? Why are we all involved in this? But Dennis Hopper, getting back to him.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper plays his character and what would become the model for how they're going to direct Denzel Washington in Training Day. Hey, Denzel, enter the room and scream and smack your dick into things. Just into people, animals, places, things. Just your dick is everywhere. Dennis Hopper, similar acting style. I mean, he has such great legendary lines as "I'll fuck anything that moves," which was in a Pigface song. My other personal favorite in the movie, "I can hear your fucking radio, you stupid shit." He literally can hear his police radio. You want to go for a ride, kind of like the cowboy in Mulholland Drive. You want to go for a ride? No. You want to go for a ride? Let's go for a ride. As they, by the way, I've watched way too many fucking combat sports, and I am way too like just fucking street because they like literally pick Kamagothin up by like the scruff of his neck and walk him to the car. I'd have been like, I'd have been like biting Dennis Hopper, like get off me. But you know, everyone in this movie is very white, so you know they're able to muscle him. They're able to muscle him daintily into the car. Blue Velvet's fun. Blue Velvet.
Oh yeah.
Blue Velvet, I think, you know, this is definitely one of those where I'm not showing this to anybody who isn't a serious film person, because nobody who isn't a serious film person will have the patience for it. It's the least surreal of the bunch. It is the least dreamy of the bunch, because the only one kind of giving like a weirdo, dreamy performance is Isabella Rossellini. Everybody else is, like I said, and I go back to that, like why else is that like a John Warder scene? Because it's one of those where it's like, I think David Lynch had an idea in his head of what he wanted it to be. He was like, I'm committing this to film. This idea is awesome. You know, I need dumpy women dancing on a car. Like, this is what I need in my life. And everyone's just like, sure. Like, I guess so. And I'm not entirely sure what it had to do with the rest of the fucking movie, but it's there and it's memorable enough that I'm talking about it now. So what did you think of Blue Velvet?
And like you said, easily the most coherent. It's a little bit like I said, like watching a really wholesome movie, or a Leave It to Beaver or Donna Reed show or something style sitcom, except with just the slightest fine layer of grime on it, or just a little bit of artful shadow. In places, it's the least open to interpretation. Yeah, I think, and yet it still manages to be so damn satisfying. For again, that just little bit of dreaminess of something being just a little bit off, but you can't put your finger on why, because everyone is acting pretty much okay with it. Or at the very least, they're not taking it as seriously as you maybe think they ought to be. The first moment of that is the moment when Kyle MacLachlan hands the severed ear over to the detective. And the detective...
His reaction is priceless.
He's more bemused about it than anything else. Like he left his wallet at the diner across town, and someone actually followed him all the way to the police station, got past security, and came up to his office to hand it to him.
Yeah, he very much has like, "Hey, Mo, someone felled another ear." You know, like oh god, another day, another ear is found.
Found an ear. That's a shame. And you say that means DMV is going to go down to only one lane at 11 a.m. Old timers say, you found a nose. That's really lucky. Did you find any noses? That's okay. Maybe next time. Ain't quite nose season yet. Old Timmy's trick testicle been acting up every time the temperature drops below 54.2 degrees Fahrenheit. So could be any day now.
You good?
I'm good.
I didn't want to stop you. That was very Pat Mullen-esque impression.
Wow. That wasn't the comparison I anticipated.
I like Blue Velvet a lot.
I did too. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
It's a trying movie, though. It is one of those where you're just like, where is this going? Wait, why is this happening? I thought, I was looking at the Wikipedia. It says, despite Blue Velvet's initial appearance as a mystery, the film operates on a number of thematic levels. The film owes a large debt to 1950s film noir, containing and exploring such conventions as the femme fatale, a seemingly unstoppable villain, and the questionable moral outlook of the hero, as well as its unusual use of shadowy, sometimes dark cinematography. Blue Velvet represents and establishes Lynch's famous askew vision and introduces several common elements of Lynch's work. some of which would later become his trademarks, including distorted characters, a polarized world, a debilitating damage to the skull or brain. Perhaps the most significant Lynchian trademark in the film is the depiction of unearthing a dark underbelly in a seemingly idealized small town. Yeah, that was another like thing that like reminded me of Wes Anderson and John Waters, is, you know, how much there is this desire to peer, and you know, we talked about this with like American Beauty. There's this desire with a lot of pierce the veil of banal existence. You know, it's interesting. And I want to throw this out there as just an idea. We came out of World War II into the 50s, and we were the only other superpower on the planet besides the Soviet Union. We were the only free superpower. We're one of the few countries engaged in World War II that wasn't summarily destroyed by it. Mm-hmm. And for about a 20-year period, it gave us plenty. We lived in Shangri-La. And I'm not talking about like how we treated minorities. Please, everyone, that's not the only thing in the universe. Yeah. People in the 20-year period coming out of World War II, the suburbs happened. Mm-hmm. Cars happened. Families bloomed. You know, the American middle class emerged as a powerhouse for capitalism. And along with the creation of the American middle class came a lot of moral standards. You know, if we do this, then everyone benefits. And if everyone benefits, that is good. Mm-hmm. And it's like from the 70s on, it was how that's a giant lie. The suburbs was a deal with the devil, and we need to now tear it apart. And to the extent that some of that's true, there was a lot of, you know, abuses happening in families, neglect happening in families, you know, political corruption during that time. I mean, it wasn't all great. It wasn't all bad, but it wasn't all great. And I'm stating what feels like the obvious, but I'm coming at it from the standpoint of view of these filmmakers very much looked at the overvaluing of that era of Americana and going, it's not all it's cracked up to be. We need to kind of examine this realistically and tear it down and look inside of it and see what were the problems here. Because it's, you know, it's almost like in order to get the pendulum from having swung too far one way, and they needed to yell and scream at it to get it to swing the other way. Now we're in this world of everything is bad and, you know, nothing is good. And, you know, and all white people need to be driven into the sea. It's like, all right, can we come back to the fucking middle here? But that's where I feel like David Lynch is definitely kind of in that school of thought of, I need to, you know, when you're looking at the dark underbelly of like everything, like you're presenting these nicely coiffed white characters and going, but there's a problem here. That's what Wes Anderson was doing. We talked about him. But there's a problem here. You know, John Waters. But there's a problem here. This is not all, you know, white middle class America. Not all it's cracked up to be.
John Waters is almost more like, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I apologize for nothing.
Sorry.
You're fine.
So that being the case, anything else about Blue Velvet that you want to talk about?
Not really. It's so straightforward and so good. I think that if you go in not knowing it's a David Lynch movie, not knowing who David Lynch is, or not knowing who David Lynch is and what his legacy is, it's probably going to be a little more confusing. Whereas on the other hand, if you kind of go in now in hindsight, knowing what to expect from him, it's that much easier to appreciate. But overall, easily the one I had the most fun watching, far and away.
Yeah, I would say so. Okay, and then the last one is Lost Highway. Lost Highway is a 1997 surrealist and neo-noir psychological thriller horror film directed by David Lynch and co-written by Lynch and Barry Gifford. Stars Bill Pullman, Patricia Arquette, Balthazar Getty, and Robert Blake in his final film role. The film follows a musician who begins receiving mysterious VHS tapes of him and his wife and their home. He is suddenly convicted of murder, after which he explicitly disappears and is replaced by a young mechanic leading a different life. Upon release, it received mixed reviews and grossed $3.7 million in North America after a modest 3-week run. Most critics initially dismissed the film as incoherent, but has since attracted a cult following and critical praise, as well as scholarly interest. Lost Highway is the first of 3 Lynch films set in Los Angeles, followed by Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire. The film was adapted as an opera. The film was adapted as an opera by Austrian composer Olga Neuwirth in 2003. Well, follow your passions. Wait. All right. So this was an interesting one. I remember, like I said, I watched it when it came out because of the Trent Reznor soundtrack. And I remember thinking at the time, like, ouch, my brain. It's slow and plotting at times.
Yeah.
And then you kind of follow Bill Pullman's story to the point where he goes to prison with Henry Rollins. And then that's abandoned. And the movie starts all over again. And you're into the thing with Balthazar Getty and Patricia Arquette yet again. And that kind of goes for a while. And, and very much Patricia Arquette, very much in that part of the movie, very much doing her best Isabella Rossellini, Rigatoni. And then it gets to the last third of the movie, and it's just like we bring back Bill Pullman. We bring back the not Pinhead guy. Robert Loggia takes a beating, and then Bill Pullman gets chased by cops. He passes OJ. We're done here. It is weird.
Yeah.
I don't dislike it. I don't dislike Lost Highway, but it's very much one of those where, like, it is almost the antithesis of the idea of I watch film to be entertained. Like, Lost Highway forces you to pay attention to it. So when I say, like, when I say entertained, it's a euphemism for I want passive entertainment I don't have to think about. You can't do that with this movie. This is not a movie you put on the background while you're working. This is not a movie you have on while you're texting girls. You will miss giant segments of information in this movie, and you already won't know what's happening. This will be just worse. You talked about being in a dream state. Lost Highway is like you being knocked unconscious and left in the Everglades, and you woke up and you were like, I have no idea where I am or how to get out of here. And oh my god, that's a boa constrictor.
I think it's an intriguingly tense 90-minute mystery that's unfortunately suffocated into a coma by a 2-hour runtime.
I'm going to read this to you and get your reaction to it. Although Lost Highway is generally classified as a neo-noir, the film borrows elements from other genres, including German Expressionism and French New Wave. Boy, does that explain a lot. The term psychological thriller and horror film have often been used to describe its narrative elements. Writing for the Australian Metro magazine, Thomas Caldwell described Fred Madison as a typical film noir hero, inhabiting a doomed, desolate world characterized by an excessive sexuality, darkness, and violence. Yeah, that's another through thread, is that the Balthazar Getty character and somewhat Bill Pullman very much resemble Kyle MacLachlan in Blue Velvet, in that they are innocent, in their own way. They are living a nice life, and they're not bothering anybody, and they see a pretty girl, and that pretty girl sucks them in to this underworld of insanity, and they are imposing their morality on this crazy world. And as I tried to tell my son, you cannot attack the mob without muscle. No. One lone gunman isn't going to do it for you. You need an army behind you, or you got nothing. That's how it all works. And that's always like the tension of these movies, is that they're like, I just want to do the right thing, and they are beset on all sides by villains. And then, and so now they're fighting the tidal wave of villainy and trying to figure out how to outwit them. And it all comes down to like one final confrontation with the big boss, and they defeat the big boss and ride off into the sunset. Almost, and that when I describe it that way, it almost seems very straightforward, but like that is me trying to pick up spilled milk with my hands and put it into a glass.
The theories of this movie that I kind of liked the most, the readings of it, were the one that obviously it's an entire cycle of madness and tragedy. Hence the desolate, hopeless atmosphere of everything, because it's all just, on some level, you kind of get the feeling that everyone knows it's all just going to come right back around again. And it's all just going to continue ad infinitum. But also, there's a certain sense that desolation is preferable to the idea that for Bill Pullman, even his madness has degenerated to so much misery that even in his dissociation, everything still falls apart and turns to tragedy and loss and confusion and chaos. So it's almost like it's preferable to just be someplace where everything is miserable and consistent, as opposed to where no matter which step you take, it's now what fresh hell is this?
Yeah. Some other readings from the wiki here. Lynch does not favor advancing a specific interpretation and said that the film leaves viewers to interpret events as they choose. Again, goddamn you, David Lynch. Just tell me what you're saying. No, I'm a pretty girl and I'm not making any sense. Gifford, however, thinks the film offers a rational explanation. Gifford, however, thinks that the film offers a rational explanation to its surreal events. According to him, Fred Madison is experiencing a psychogenic fugue, which is manifested when he transforms into Pete. Some viewers think the film is a homage to Ambrose Bierce's 1890 short story, An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. The film's circular narrative has been likened to a Mobius strip. Cultural critic Slazhov Zizek felt that this circularity is analogous to a psychoanalytic process. According to him, there is symptomatic key phrases that always returns as an insistent, traumatic, indecipherable message, like the real. And there is a temporal loop, as with analysis, where the protagonist at first fails to encounter the self, but in the end is able to pronounce the symptom consciously as his own. This implies that Fred's madness is so powerful that even the fantasy where he sees himself as Pete ultimately dissolves and ends in a nightmare. So, you know what this kind of reminds me of in that sense? Fight Club. Where you're projecting this identity.
Yes.
And you're projecting this identity and it's almost a separate self. And then eventually you are able to reconcile things and be your true self again, but this time made a little bit more whole by the experiences of you being this other self.
This is Fight Club then without that coalescence, because I'm not sure he ever comes completely together as a whole person again.
Well, also, I think this is Fight Club without the accidental promotion of toxic masculinity.
Oh, it is absolutely that. Oh, yeah.
But I would absolutely, but if I were to redo a triple feature of like duality, I would absolutely pair this with Fight Club.
Fight Club, Lost Highway, A Beautiful Mind. Since that was a real person, might be a little too a little bit bad taste. So no, scratch that idea. Now I'm going to be thinking about what we would come up with for a third one.
We'll figure it out. We're not doing this again. But
I'll come back to that one. Yeah.
But overall, I think Patricia Arquette actually gives a really good performance. I like Bill Pullman in this. I think Bill Pullman sometimes gets tarred with he's not a great actor because he was in Independence Day and he was in Spaceballs. And it's like, oh, you're just kind of a funny, goofy actor, but he's actually quite good in this. You know, he has that sort of bewildered Harrison Ford Patriot Games look about him. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And I'm angry about it.
Yeah.
Balthazar Getty is okay. I don't know if I love him in this, but you know, as in terms of being the innocent boy, seduced by a corrupted girl and falling into a pit of criminal despair, yeah, he's okay.
Yeah.
Anything else about Lost Highway?
No, I think we've really kind of said it all for David, except that I would throw out there, and again, this is probably just a matter of everything being open to interpretation. I feel like with the way he kind of interprets some of these perceptions of chaos, repetition, dissociation sometimes, fantasy kind of gone sour, a very kind of desperate escapism. I sort of feel like whether wittingly or unwittingly, he might understand neurodivergence. If he is, in fact, he might be neurodivergent for all I know. He really conveys the part that we kind of have the hardest time getting across to neurotypical people. Mm-hmm. without sounding like we're lunatics. It's almost like if I were talking to somebody about the conditions that I deal with, and I know they've never dealt with them, but I know they've seen a few David Lynch movies. I could say, okay, Mulholland Drive, little bit like that at times, mm-hmm. or you know that kind of. That kind of feeling, all is lost to the cycle kind of feeling at the end of Lost Highway. Yeah, I've had days I woke up feeling like that. So, but again,
we've all had that feeling of waking up naked in the desert.
Yeah,
face down.
Right. Fucking Tuesdays, but again, that's the brilliance of it, is the fact that he doesn't make it so vague that it seems pointless, but it's just open-ended enough that almost whatever you can come up with, chances are there's some plausible thread to it. And he's more than okay with that. He's not the type that's going to go forth, I think, necessarily lambasting fans who maybe see something in it that he doesn't. I think he's just happy that someone is getting something meaningful out of his work.
Mulholland Drive, I'm curious about this. Mulholland Drive made $20 million on a $15 million budget. Mm-hmm. Blue Velvet made $8.6 million in North America on a $6 million budget. And Lost Highway, we said, made $3.8 million. It's interesting. I would imagine his stuff does well enough that he can continue to get funding for it, or it's one of those where, like, your shit may not make any money, but you're going to win a lot of awards for our studio, so we'll throw you a check. But I think David Lynch movies matter. I think his work is important to the film world at large. I'm never going to convince everybody, especially if movies are passive entertainment for you and you just don't care, to sit down and watch these things. In fact, I told people we were doing this, and there was definitely a visceral reaction of, why would you do that to yourself? Because the stuff should be talked about, and it should be talked about. It should be watched. It should be considered. It's not for everybody. I can count on one hand the amount of people I'm like, you should watch this David Lynch movie. No, it's fine.
No,
but I absolutely want David Lynch to exist, and I would like see more more this ilk. So that's it. That's our triple feature for today. For our director focus on David Lynch. Tonight, Alexis and somebody will be discussing Loki season 2. Speaking of the exact opposite of this sort of thing. Yesterday, her and Jesse Starcher looked at Hell of a Boss season 2 part 1. Jesse and I concluded our look at The Deuce. And then for almost 3 hours, myself, Alexis, and Robert lambasted the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a little bit of that time was dedicated to talking about the Marvels. That podcast was longer than the fucking movie. Next week, we had a quick change in the schedule because I was nice to my boss and changed my hours. We'll be looking at The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Snakes and Songbirds. We'll be reviewing Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton movie. That'll be myself and Dorian. The next time you will see Sean. Let's see. Comer Codex. Next time, oh, for fuck's sake, the next time you will see Sean is, oh lordy, no, that's not true. Damn it! I have to put your name into things. This is how I lose stuff. Okay, the next time Sean and I will be getting together will be a long road to ruin for Home Alone. We're gonna look at the first 3 movies, the Home Alone movies. That'll be fun, and then we will take a break and we will come back in January with a triple feature that Sean wanted to do: the Street Fighter cartoon movie, Street Fighter 2, The Legend of Chun-Li, and Mortal Kombat. Oh no, these are the live action ones. That's right. Yeah. These are the live action movies. We did an on trial for the first Mortal Kombat, and Sean was like, "We need to talk about Annihilation." So we're doing Street Fighter 2, Legend of Chun-Li, and then Mortal Kombat Annihilation, because we've done so much hoity film lately. Now we need to dive into the trash and see, what raccoon food we can find. All right, what do you got going on, Sean?
All right. For rantings, ravings, and all of the things, you can follow me on Instagram and Threads at the handle you see at the bottom of your screen. I am back to streaming as of tomorrow night. I'm going to be on from probably 7 p.m. Central Time, playing probably 2 hours of Overwatch, and then we are jumping into a live running review from beginning to end, maybe not all in one night, but really beginning to end, of Batman Arkham Asylum. And the best way to keep track of when I am streaming is going to be to either be subscribed to me or follow me on Instagram and Threads, and also to go over to Twitch, follow, or if you're feeling especially generous, subscribe, and make sure that you turn notifications on for a little ping every time I decide to pick up a controller with one hand and push a button with the other one.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us here on Triple Feature. He's Sean, you're not. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.